the McMinnville UFO photographs were taken by a farming couple, Paul and Evelyn Trent, near McMinnville, Oregon, United States in May 1950. The photos were reprinted in Life magazine and in newspapers across the nation, and are often considered to be among the most famous photographs ever taken of a UFO. Most UFO skeptics believe that the photos are a hoax, but many ufologists continue to argue that the photos actually depict a genuine unidentified object in the sky. Although these images have become known as the McMinnville UFO photographs, the Trent Farm was actually just outside Sheridan, Oregon, approximately 9 miles or 15 kilometers southwest of McMinnville, which was the nearest larger town. According to astronomer William K. Hartmann's account, on the 11th of May 1950 at 7:30 p.m., Evelyn Trent was walking back to her farmhouse after feeding her caged rabbits. Before reaching the house, she noticed a slow-moving, metallic disc-shaped object heading in her direction from the northeast. She yelled for her husband, Paul, who was inside the house. He claimed that upon leaving the house, he also saw the object. After watching the object for a short time, he went back inside their home to obtain a camera. He said he managed to take 2 photos of the object before it sped away to the west. Paul Trent's father also claimed he briefly viewed the object before it flew away. Hartmann's version of the incident traces back to an interview the Trents gave to Lou Gillette, host of the radio station KMCM, later KLYC, and quoted in the Oregonian newspaper on the 10th of June 1950. However, the Trents had given a slightly different version of the incident to the local McMinnville newspaper, the Telephone Register, 2 days earlier on the 8th of June 1950. In that version, Evelyn Trent stated, "We'd been out in the backyard. Both of us saw the object at the same time. The camera. Paul thought it was in the car, but I was sure it was in the house. I was right, and the Kodak was loaded with film. The roll of film in the Trent's camera was not entirely used up, so the Trents did not have the film developed immediately. The film was not developed until the remaining frames were used in shooting family photographs for Mother's Day, Sunday, the 14th of May 1950. In a 1997 interview, the Trents claimed that they initially thought the object they had photographed was a secret military aircraft, and feared that the photos might bring them trouble. When he mentioned his sighting and photographs to his banker, Frank Hartman, the banker was intrigued enough to display them from his bank window in McMinnville. Shortly afterwards, Bill Powell, a local newspaper reporter, convinced Mr. Trent to loan him the negatives. Powell examined the negatives and found no evidence that they were tampered with or faked. On June 8, 1950, Powell's story of the incident, accompanied by the 2 photos, was published as a front-page story in the McMinnville Telephone Register. The headline read, "At long last, authentic photographs of flying saucer." The story and photos were subsequently picked up by the International News Service, INS, and sent to other newspapers around the nation, thus giving them wide publicity. Life magazine published cropped versions of the photos on June 26, 1950, along with a photo of Trent and his camera. The Trents had been promised that the negatives would be returned to them. However, they were not returned. Life magazine told the Trents that it had misplaced the negatives. In 1967, the negatives of the Trent photos were found in the files of the United Press International (UPI), the news service which had merged with INS years earlier. The negatives were then loaned to Dr. William K. Hartmann, an astronomer who was working as an investigator for the Condon Committee, a government-funded UFO research project based at the University of Colorado Boulder. The Trents were not immediately informed that their lost negatives had been found. Hartmann interviewed the Trents and was impressed by their sincerity. The Trents apparently never asked for any money for their photos, nor could he find any evidence that they had sought any notoriety from them. In Hartmann's analysis, he wrote to the Condon Committee that this is one of the few UFO reports in which all factors investigated, geometric, psychological, and physical, appear to be consistent with the assertion that an extraordinary flying object, silvery, metallic, disc-shaped, tens of meters in diameter, and evidently artificial, flew within sight of 2 witnesses. One reason for this conclusion was due to the photometric analysis of the images. Hartmann noted that the brightness of the underside of the object appeared to be lighter than the underside of the oil tank seen in the images. This could be due to the effects of atmospheric extinction and scattering, the same effects that make distant mountains appear washed out and blue. This effect suggested the objects were further from the camera than the tank, not small, local objects. Hartmann did, however, also point out the possibility that the images were manufactured. He noted that the object appears beneath a pair of wires, as is seen in plates 23 and 24. We may question, therefore, whether it could have been a model suspended from one of the wires. This possibility is strengthened by the observation that the object appears beneath roughly the same point in the two photos, in spite of their having been taken from two positions, and concludes these tests do not rule out the possibility that the object was a small model suspended from the nearby wire by an unresolved thread. Hartmann also noticed a discrepancy that would later become the main point of objection for later skeptics. He noticed that the overall lighting of the image was consistent with the lighting that would be expected around sunset, but noted that there could be a possible discrepancy in view of the fact that the UFO, the telephone pole, possibly the garage at the left, and especially the distant house gables left of the distant barn are illuminated from the right or east. The house, in particular, appears to have a shadow under its roof that would suggest a daylit photo, and combined with the eastward incidence, one could argue that the photos were taken on a dull, sunlit day at, say, 10 a.m. After Hartmann concluded his investigation, he returned the negatives to UPI, which then informed the Trents. In 1970, the Trents asked Philip Bladine, the editor of the News Register, the successor of the Telephone Register, for the negatives. The Trents noted that they had never been paid for the negatives, and thus wanted them back. Bladine asked UPI to return the negatives, which it did. However, for some reason, Bladine did not inform the Trents that the negatives had been returned.